I'm sure you've seen all over the news the new dietary guidelines for Americans were released. And today, not only do I want to review those guidelines with you, I want to look at them through a sports dietitian or sports nutrition lens so that you understand how these new guidelines will apply to you and how some of the new recommendations might not apply to you as the athlete. Now, before we dive in, I want to introduce myself. My name is Emily. I am a registered dietitian and a running strength coach. I am so glad you're here today, and I am so excited to review some of these guidelines with you because I know it's a hot topic. So let me know in the comments if you think of any questions as we chat throughout this video. The first thing I really need you to understand and get here is that as an athlete, you are a special person. I tell my athletes this all the time, and I will continue to tell athletes this. Athletes are special people. They're special people, and their nutrition needs are very special and are very unlike the general population. There are so many nutrition recommendations out there, and sometimes if athletes follow certain recommendations, it's not good and it can backfire. It can cause underfueling, poor recovery, decreased performance, injury, hormone issues, GI issues. I mean, I could go on and on. So know that as an athlete, your nutrition needs are special, and some of these nutrition guidelines just don't pertain to you. So let's dive into first this image that we see of the new food pyramid. I think it's really interesting because over the years we've gone from the food pyramid to something called My Plate, which is a picture of a plate and it represents where to put things on the plate and the portion of what you should put on your plate. And then now we're back to this food pyramid. I honestly, between the food pyramid and My Plate, the old pyramid, the new pyramid, I like My Plate the best. I truly believe that it represents a balanced plate for the general population. And I created runner's plates that stem from this My Plate, and I use that to teach runners every single day how to fuel their body and how to adjust their eating when their training load changes. Looking at this new food pyramid, why are whole grains at the bottom? I don't love this at all because I can see people limiting whole grains or even fearing whole grains, and we don't need to do that. Whole grains are so beneficial. They are fiber rich, so they're a really great source of fiber. They provide carbohydrates. And whether we are athletes or not, we need carbohydrates every single day to support our body, our health, and our brain function. Fun fact, our brain uses at least 130 grams of carbs a day. Whole grains can help us reach that. And a perk is that it also can help us reach our daily fiber needs, which the general population falls way short on. If an athlete follows this new food pyramid, it can cause them to fall significantly short of their daily carbohydrate needs, and we don't want that. It's going to negatively impact your health, your performance, and your recovery. So at the end of the day, I won't be using this food pyramid to teach athletes how to eat. I will be continuing to use my runner's plate method as a really good representation of how to eat on a daily basis and how to align their eating with their exercise. I do like that these guidelines emphasize whole nutrient-dense foods for the general population and for athletes. But for athletes, the recommendation to reduce refined carbohydrates, added sugar, and sodium is not necessarily applicable, and let's talk about why. In runner's nutrition and in athlete's nutrition, there is a place for both high fiber complex carbs and low fiber refined carbs. In fact, there are even times when I would recommend for a runner to choose low fiber carbs over those higher fiber complex carbs. And that is when we're eating within the hour of exercise. So let's say we wake up, we have 45 minutes to eat before we do a workout. We want to choose lower fiber carbohydrates. During exercise, the fuel that we're choosing or the food that we're choosing, we want that to be low fiber. And then during a carb load for a race, we want to choose lower fiber carbohydrates. Now, carbs are amazing because they fuel our performance, but fiber slows down digestion. And if we eat too much fiber too close to exercise, it can result in GI issues. So that's why that recommendation is there. And runners, please keep fueling with your gels, your sports shoes, your sugar-rich sports drinks, because this is easily digestible fuel for your body and supports long-distance running performance. So no need to be scared or limit our running fuel at all. So I better not see you doing that. Long distance athletes also have higher sodium needs, and the guidelines do acknowledge that. So I do appreciate that. The general recommendation of consuming less than 2,300 milligrams per day typically doesn't apply to runners. Now, the third thing is that I do like and appreciate that the guidelines encourage protein at every meal and encourage dairy. I think that these two things are really great for not only the general population, but for athletes. I already encourage athletes to include protein at all their meals and all their snacks, but through all the hundreds of athletes that I've coached over the years, I have found that it is so common for athletes to consume too much protein and not enough carbohydrates. So that's a huge adjustment that I make over and over again with the athletes that I coach. We're putting such a high emphasis on protein, not enough emphasis on carbohydrates. And then when we make those appropriate adjustments that we need to make, it's amazing how it can significantly improve energy and recovery and performance. So protein is important, but carbohydrates are important too. And there is such thing as eating too much protein. Now, as a protein-rich food, dairy also has a lot of benefits. So I'm glad that they include dairy in their recommendations and encourage dairy. It's a great source of not only protein, but calcium and vitamin D, which is important for both the general population and for athletes. The thing that I really do not agree with here in our new guidelines is that they're labeling saturated fats. So animal fats, butter, beef tallow, specifically they list these as healthy fats. But then they also go and say that saturated fat consumption shouldn't exceed 10% of total daily calories, and this is very contradicting. As a dietitian, I consider healthy fats from plants and fatty fish like salmon and tuna. These are primarily unsaturated fats. And I think that Americans are already getting way too much saturated fat and not enough unsaturated fat, especially those omega-3s. And those omega-3s we know have amazing health benefits for not only the general population, but for athletes. And they also have some recovery and performance benefits as well. So after reviewing these new guidelines for Americans, I will not be changing my nutrition recommendations for my athletes. I'm going to keep on keeping on. And while these guidelines can work for the general population, athletes really do require specialized performance-focused nutrition strategies that are often not included in the guidelines. Thanks for listening in today. I would love to hear your thoughts and what you think about the new dietary guidelines. And if you're new here, please follow along. Don't forget to hit subscribe.